The Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our ServiceNow series, where we interview the best and brightest of the industry to share their story, advice, and views on the exciting world of ServiceNow and digital transformation.
You're listening to the Alldus podcast, the ServiceNow series. Our guest today is Michael Sutherland. Michael is the ServiceNow leader at Franciscan Health. Michael, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. Glad to be here, John.
So, Michael, let's start with yourself, please, as we do with all of our guests. Could you give us a little bit of an overview of your background in technology, from where you got started, some of the roles you've held along the way, and most importantly, what's led you to where you are today as the business unit leader for automation service now at Franciscan Health?
I started out in finance many, many years ago, specifically credit card fraud. I did this right out of college. Well, while I was going to college, I was doing it, but then right out of college as well, I did it. And then I took a big gap in the middle where I tried to own my own business, which was very successful for 10 years, but also a lot of work. And so when I stopped doing that, I went back to that. Gotcha. And from there, the guy in charge of the finance team, he got tired of waiting on IT, really is what it comes down to. And so he started his own robotic process automation team within finance. And I got the opportunity to be part of that. So the role was a business analyst, and I was gathering requirements and then very quickly building robots, really focused on, identifying repetitive tasks, non-value add work, and then automating that with robots, right? This is kind of where, I think workflow becomes really important, and you get a really good understanding as you start to understand this. From there, I moved into really building bigger, more robust, and more complicated automation. And this is where I really got involved with ServiceNow. And ServiceNow, we used it for a variety of things. And so I initially, as I've been a consumer of ServiceNow, a fulfiller within ServiceNow for a while. But at this point, I really became, not necessarily a developer within ServiceNow, but I was really tying into things, working with their APIs, working with their tickets, et cetera, right? Probably the biggest change for me was moving from a technical role into management and taking on more of a responsibility for both the intelligent automation team and the ServiceNow team, because we were doing so many hybrid projects together that we were really driving most of the growth within the organization as far as ServiceNow is concerned. This changed for me. I mean, all of a sudden, it wasn't just building the automation. It wasn't just, coming up with the solution and designing the catalog item, right? It was actually being responsible for the architecture and the governance and making sure that platform was really delivering business value. And that's really been where I've been focused for the last 5 years, is making sure that the enterprise strategy around ServiceNow makes sense, adds value, and is moving forward in a timely manner.
I want to talk about the segue to your current and most recent role as the manager of applications for ServiceNow at Franciscan Health. Before doing so, tell us a little bit about Franciscan Health as an organization, who you are, what you do, mission of the business.
Yeah, Franciscan Health is based out of Indiana. It is a Catholic hospital organization, so it's a Catholic-run business. And it's great. It really works very hard to make sure that people get the same level of healthcare regardless of who they are, where they come from, anything like that. We use ServiceNow extensively within the company.
Let's set the current state, because I know in our conversations, Franciscan Health has good, healthy adoption of the ServiceNow platform. Let's tell that story, what you inherited, and then it can feed into your role and responsibility. So what does the current environment look like?
So I've been with Franciscan now about 6 months, and this is my first time in a healthcare industry. Prior to this, I was working for a large fintech, primarily focused on insurance products. So kind of touching medical data, kind of touching the medical industry for a little bit, but not the way this is. And it is different. It is interesting. Today here at Franciscan, we use it obviously for IT. We have IT, ITOM, ITSM, ITOM, CMDB, all those good things really well rolled out. We're also using it APM for application portfolio management and software asset management. So we use all that within IT. Outside of IT, we have HRSD, and HR uses it pretty extensively. We manage all of our contractors through ServiceNow instead of Workday. We have also used it for the PMO, so they're using SPM. And we're rolling out security operations and privacy modules now.
So again, a great example of a fully integrated organization. Well, moving towards fully integrated, but
Right.
lots of modules in play and allows them to cross communicate. So all of that flows through your department. So help us understand the landscape. What are your core responsibilities? What is the team makeup and how are you executing on existing maintenance of the platforms to looking at future use cases? Help us visualize the entire role and responsibility.
So Franciscan is set up with some product owners. We have product owners embedded in all these different business areas. So there's several in ITSM, there's several in security, and there's a couple in HR as well, and in the PMO. And what they do is they're really responsible for the business processes, the business products that we're going to roll out within ServiceNow. My team is responsible for the architecture, the governance, and the development work. So what we do now is that we coordinate with our product owners. We understand what it is that they're trying to accomplish, what their goals are. We create a roadmap, and then we work towards developing the solutions that they need. We also maintain a lot of, Franciscan's been on the platform now for about 8 years. There's a lot of maintenance work. There's a decent level of customization, some of which makes sense and some of which has kind of been left over from, work that we did a long time ago. So we're trying to walk that back and get it all into a more stable, I shouldn't say more stable, it's pretty stable now, but into a healthier environment where it's, more easily supported.
Yeah. I think that's important just to have a candid conversation around the organizations like Franciscan who have been mature in their ServiceNow adoption.
Mm-hmm.
However, some of the knock-on effects of that can be over customization of some of the earlier iterations of the platform. And when you look at what's available now, there's an opportunity to do a bit of a reset and take a more structured, minimal customizations and get maximum benefit from it.
Right.
That's something you and I are talking about actively right now is current state, optimal state, and how you tread that needle. What can you tell us about that? Because I know that's part of your 2026 mission is to look at those over customized elements and get it right sized.
So a good example I can give you is major incident management. When Franciscan went on platform, they didn't have an opportunity. They didn't have the option of using major incident management. It just wasn't there yet. So they built something themselves to sort of mimic major incident. It kind of sits on top of the existing incident. So we're not using the out-of-the-box major incident flows. We're using these custom flows. This year, we're working to undo all of that and put in the out-of-the-box functions because we picked up Now Assist, and we want to take advantage of the Now Assist functions for major incident. In order to do that, you need to use the major incident flows. So it kind of gets you, right? There isn't a urgency necessarily because it isn't hurting anything. We didn't alter the major incident flows, so there's no skip changes. There's no problems there when we upgrade. But it also means that we can't take advantage of the upcoming new technology, and that's what we really want, right?
Yeah, it's such an important point because if you want to have a true AI optimization strategy, you need to make sure that the core infrastructure is set up to benefit from Now Assist and its capabilities. And for a mature environment that's using multiple modules, these are the important pieces of work that will allow you to get maximum benefit. So it's very, very cool indeed. You're 6 months in the role, obviously industry shift, but an exciting one for you because you're getting ownership of an entire ServiceNow org who is really committed to using the platform to its maximum potential. What are you excited about for the roadmap ahead, the work that's in front of you, albeit the challenges that will come with it, but when you look at what's possible, what can you tell us about the road ahead that you're particularly excited about?
You really can trace it, right? The way that things have changed in the last, let's say, really, you just say 2 years, but if we go back further, we'll go back to say 5 years, right? From just taking in tickets, working the tickets, completing the tickets, to actually automating and running the flows through a much more robust process so that you really start talking about ticket deflection. You really start talking about how you can add value back to the teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously this is going to be about AI. I don't think there's any secret about that, right? AI is really what I am the most excited about because, and ServiceNow, talked about it just recently with the workforce automation, autonomous workforce, whatever they call it. I don't know. Their names are confusing. But with that coming forward, it really gives you this opportunity to go from just ticket deflection to ticket completion to actually fulfillment, right? And to take people out of the loop. So if it's a really simple process and they don't need a person to really fulfill that ticket, if it's something we can fulfill automatically, we're now automatically fulfilling, or we will be able to, we're not yet, right?
Yeah.
And this can be applied to just about anything within ServiceNow. Some HR functions, some hardware asset functions, software asset functions, all those things. We can identify those things. And because ServiceNow isn't really a ticket system, it really is a workflow engine, right?
Yeah.
They'll tell you that all the time, but people don't think of it that way, but it really is. It really is a workflow engine.
Yeah.
Because of that, we can fulfill in other applications too. And that's where I'm really excited about, is because we can work through APIs to actually complete things.
Behind the scenes of an organization like Franciscan Health, because there's such broader adoption and growing all the time, when you start to introduce elements of Now Assist and AI capabilities, it feeds into a better performing, more efficient organization, which can then in your industry translate to better, faster care.
Right.
Speaking to an audience of ServiceNow professionals, people who are in the ecosystem, we're always looking for examples of the impact of AI, the impact of ServiceNow that can impact us as the consumers. Through the lens of Franciscan Health, you and your team being continuously successful with AI, automation, and the ServiceNow strategy, what are some of the examples that you can share with us? We can do it two-sided. One,
Sure.
from internally, how the business is going to run better, and then two, on the outside side, people who use the services of Franciscan Health.
Well, I think I have an example that really illustrates both of those in one, right?
Right.
And we haven't started this, but I'm really excited to get into this and really try to figure this out. We've all had that experience. We go to the doctor, they come in with the blood pressure cuff machine, and has the thermometer, the oxygen, all those things that it does, right? And for whatever reason, something doesn't work. The cuff doesn't work, the thermometer doesn't work, whatever it is. It doesn't work because the nurses are too busy to file the ticket to get it fixed. Right. So what happens is these devices, they get shoved in a closet someplace. They're shoved off to the side. People, I'm going to file that ticket later. And then nobody ever files that ticket. And pretty soon nobody can find a blood pressure machine because they're all sitting in the closet because this, that, or the other thing. They need a firmware update, whatever it is. It just isn't working. If we track those devices though, and we know those devices haven't moved in a certain amount of time, a ticket can be automatically filed for them to go someone to go pick them up and do a diagnostic to find out what's wrong with it. Yeah. Right. Or even better, if they could just track, if it could trigger, because it's offline for a certain amount of time, if it could just trigger repair instead directly, the incident goes to the correct team, the device is fixed, the nurse doesn't have to do anything. Which means the nurse is still doing the job that they need to be doing, which means that the patient is getting better care because the nurse isn't fighting the technology to make it happen.
The perfect example, because there's so many things at play here. Back office operational efficiencies, which leads to nurses on staff dealing with patient care for a higher percentage of the time. And it also reduces downtime of technology, which reduces unnecessary spend on replacement technology.
Correct.
Which the better budget management leads to a more efficient business. So yeah, that's a great example of how end-to-end it all comes together. I'm one of just many, and I'm sure there's a million others you and I could talk about. There's going to be growth and collaboration across the ServiceNow ecosystem in the year ahead, particularly in the area of healthcare, and even talking about the plans for Franciscan Health. You play a strategic leadership role in deciding how to optimize resources and how to execute on these plans. And it's a mix of collaborating with partners, but also building an internal team. Speaking to an audience of potential future employees, some of our listeners will be hearing this and liking what they hear and can resonate with the mission of Franciscan Health. What can you tell us about your team, the culture, the environment, and what opportunities there may be in the year ahead to come and join you?
Well, that's a good question. I approach everything we do in ServiceNow, whether it's ServiceNow, automation, whatever it is, doesn't matter. I tie it to something measurable. So tie your outcomes to something measurable, whether that's ROI, whether it's CSAT, whatever it is, whether it's customer satisfaction or money. At the end of the day, you still want to be able to measure the success. When I when I do that, it allows me to show what we really need to be to deliver that value, right? Which means that a role on my team comes with a goal right out of the gate, which is great. I don't know how many of us have had jobs. I think it's great, but I've had plenty of jobs where I don't really know what it is I'm supposed to be doing. And then you get this sort of bare outline of close all your tickets, do all of this, do all that, but you don't really understand the value you're adding.
Yeah, what does good look like? How are you judged?
Right.
How can you go home and know if you've done a good job?
Right. You get by tying the actual work we're doing to value, everybody understands what they're contributing. And I think that's incredibly important, right? You give it to the team, they understand what they're doing, they see the value that they're creating, they get to hear the stories about the people that are satisfied, that are better served by this, that have the positive feedback, and it means more because they tied their own work to it, right? It isn't just this, hey, people, we rolled out this new catalog item and everybody loved it. Okay, great, who cares? But it's actually like, hey, we rolled out this process and everybody used it, and now out of the 600 people that have been touched by this so far, 580 of them had a positive experience. Like that actually is much more meaningful, I think. So I think that to me, when you're building a team, you just really have to help them understand why their contribution matters, show it, and then celebrate it, right? Celebrate it when you get to those points, and everybody gets held accountable, which makes, I think, just a lot easier to work if you know that you're going to be held to the same standard that the guy in the desk next to you is too.
Yeah, so many great points. And just to close it off, I know you're going to continue to collaborate with the implementation partner network and community to execute, but do you anticipate growing the internal team over the year? Do you foresee any positions or opportunities for people to come and join you internally?
Yeah, I think probably yes. We're discussing a position that we're going to be opening up with my team in hopefully the next few weeks. I don't know that we're going to grow it enormously. I think we'll probably lean on partners more for that, because a lot of times,
makes sense.
Yeah, you don't want to grow a team and not have enough to keep them busy, right? I don't want to be in that position.
The cyclical nature of the ServiceNow environment is project-based, it's implementation-based, and then there's maintenance. So it makes sense to collaborate with specialist partners, and you've done so very, very well.
Well, those boutique partners really bring a lot of value to you as well, right? Because they have a level of expertise that is very hard to source, right? If I need help with specifically the security operations module, my ITSM developer is not necessarily the best person to be doing that, right? So it really does become important, I think, to lean on those partners that way.
Exactly. And there's plenty of great ones out there who can help. So, Michael, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us today. I appreciate you sharing your own career journey, giving us tremendous insight into the amazing work that's happening at Franciscan Health, and most importantly, how ServiceNow is helping the business run and what it can continue to do for Franciscan Health and its patients in the months and years ahead. So appreciate you coming on, sharing your story. I look forward to having you back on the show again in the near future.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, John. I really appreciate that. Have a good day.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.